Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. Today's guest was on the team that busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history, was a guest on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, ran a zoo, and gave away $1 billion. Episode 212 features Terry Rich, true crime speaker, author, and successful CEO.
We all crave more money, and as I do the lottery, I love promoting, I love marketing, but the lottery I had to work on ethics because of a guy that frauded the lottery. We busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history, and one of the things I found in the research I did after that all happened was, people have a desire no matter how much you have. And especially if you're trying to do something illegal, if you get by with it once, you get greedier and greedier. You'll always get caught.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Today's guest is Terry Rich. He has lots of successes to share, from making his fortune in the early days of cable TV to turning around a money-losing zoo to profitability. He's also the retired president and CEO of the Iowa Lottery. There he saw how state lotteries can change people's lives, and he helped states raise billions of dollars that go toward good causes. On the darker side of money, he'll share insights learned from foiling the biggest lottery fraud in history. In this episode, you'll learn how Terry went from modest farm kid to making more money than he ever imagined by the age of 40, creating a company culture where all employees feel welcome to share innovative ideas. And make sure you tune in to the end for a happiness tip that Terry got from Shark Tank's Damon John. Now let's get inspired with Terry Rich. Terry, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Nice to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
My dad went through the Depression. Our last name is Rich, and my great-grandfather was the largest cattle farmer in the area. It boiled down to my grandpa and my great-grandpa had a farm, and they lost it when my dad was in high school. And so that really impacted day-to-day life and how I grew up on the farm in a small town in Iowa. And the money that I remember, anytime we had some or we got some, we tried to save it. And to this day, not leveraging up too fast, too hard is something that I've taught my kids, and I think has paid big.
Yeah, the Depression era shaped an entire generation. And then it kind of trickled down, right? When you pass on and remember some of those stories.
It certainly does. And there's nothing that I feel better than being able to pay my bills, have enough money to pay something and not have to say, well, I can wait a month. Yeah, it's going to cost me 10% on my credit card, but I don't want to spend that money because I'd rather go do this or that instead. I love paying bills because I can do it.
So you value the security and the peace of mind.
Yeah, and as you build wealth, I also value taking a portion of that because I was a bigger risk taker early on. Before I had kids, when I was single, I took some big risks and they paid off. But now that I've taken those risks and I've made enough money, I still love taking 10% and just doing crazy things with it. But knowing that I have always got the 90%, I'm not going to bet the bank anymore in my life.
That's a great approach. Terry, you've had several very successful careers, and I look forward to hearing about some of your risk-taking. As an entrepreneur, I'll tease it for everybody. You made a fortune in cable television, you turned around a zoo, and you headed the Iowa Lottery. Before we get into your successes, talk a little bit more about living on the farm and what money was like for you growing up.
Well, I looking back, I think we were what most would classify as poor. I mean, we got by year to year, but I never felt that. When you grow up in a family that's loving, that is encouraging. My dad was encouraging. I'd try something, and if it failed, he'd just give me, well, what could you do differently? That sort of thing. But I really, really, really learned work ethic. Anybody that works on a farm growing up learns how to put a lot of hours in and the rewards of the time and effort for that. and the friendships. I think growing up on a farm, you rely on neighbors, and if somebody needs help, everybody shows up. And those are some values that I miss living in a city where I know my neighbors, but probably aren't quite as close.
Yeah, that's a little bit the downside of technology. I find that people are just outside less, and you don't have the neighborhood interactions that we would have had chatting about what's new and different if we weren't watching TV and on the computer all the time.
And when you're outside, if you're mad about something, you can scream to your lungs out because no one's going to hear you, but you can get it out of your system. Or I go out and do target practice or go out hunting, a whole different deal. You do feel a little more cooped up in the city, but yet, but it was the value of the friendships and the honesty that I saw on the farm that I think helped me over the years.
People have called you creative from a very young age. Were you a daydreamer in school?
Yeah, growing up, they called me ornery. And then as I got a little older, it started, the word creative came out, coming up with new ideas. So I probably I was a C student, yet I was second highest score of the ACT for my class when I graduated from high school. So I think that maybe what do they call it, ADHD or whatever it is, where you can't keep concentrating on one thing. But I love coming up with new ideas. Nothing more fun than trying to find something and have success.
Well, I've heard this statement. I don't know, maybe things change over time, but I know looking back, the idea that the A students became doctors and engineers, and the B students became corporate executives, and they say that the C students became entrepreneurs. Maybe there's some truth to that.
I think so.
I know that you developed an interest in radio and TV early on. Did you have any idea at that time that would grow into a career?
Not really. I started as a math major. I passed out of a year of calc and a year of physics going into school, but I got bored. Back to the boring parts, I had a class for a whole semester, pass, fail, to prove that 1 was not equal to 0. And I talked to my buddy and he said, well, I'm over here in the TV and radio group, and you can talk and make a living. I thought, well, hell, that sounds good to me. So I went over and got involved in the radio and television and fell in love with, maybe it's a little acting, maybe it's a little grace, but I was also heavily involved in politics at the time. This was during the Vietnam War and all the protests and all the crazy stuff going on in the 1960s and 70s. So I found that radio and TV is fun. But again, I wasn't organized enough. All my buddies were going to broadcast television. And one day the cable television company from Des Moines came up to class at Iowa State, names, and said, we need somebody who's politically active because we got to have an election to be able to get cable TV in town. So I raised my hand. That was a fateful step because they hired me after that election, and they said that they couldn't pay me much in cash. I think it was $500 a month. But they'd give me these things called stock options. Who knew?
Did you know the meaning of that at the time?
Heck no. I just kept throwing things in my safety deposit box back to what my dad had, But $500 to me was still $1 million for what I was making on a farm, baling hay or walking beans or whatever. It was enough that I could live on. And I usually always worked 2 jobs, whatever I did. I was looking for something else. So when I was working in the cable television business, on the weekends, I became a radio DJ. So I could say 73 degrees and cloudy, all that sort of stuff. And it was really fun because I had a music background through high school, and you're inspired by different people. I had a really cool, one of the best teachers I had was my music teacher, because he had to get off the road for health issues to become a teacher as a music teacher. He had the best jazz high school group that I got to play in the Midwest. And so you learn from just by chance people that you're associated with. So again, back being on the farm, I could talk to him. My dad would know everybody on a plane when we took a plane trip by the time we were done. And I learned that those interactions made so much difference in the networking.
It sounds like it's been a recurring theme that you're quick to raise your hand. And that's also advice that you give to young people today?
There are 2 things. I usually ask, if I could go back and be 21 again, which would be fun, what would you do the same? And one thing I learned was to always raise my hand. And when I started in the cable television, somebody say, "Hey, toilets need cleaning." Nobody raised their hands. "Oh, I'll go clean it. What? That's no big deal. I did that on the farm, cleaning out hog houses." But by raising your hand, you become noticed. And then when you become noticed, you're given extra and more fun responsibilities with that. The second thing I've still not accomplished and challenged is I wish I'd learned how to relax. I think I can remember one or two times where I went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and the second week I finally felt bliss, because I'm always looking for what's new, what could we change, what could we do differently. And I wish I could have learned a little more on how to relax. And that's always good when you're with family, to be able to, focus on the family group rather than, oh, I got to make this call or do this text.
Yeah, it sounds like a good balance, yin yang, because you've got to be proactive, raising your hand, but at the same time, you need to slow down and create a little space so that you can rest your mind and rest your body. I know that TV personality Bill Riley became a mentor to you. What did you learn from him?
Bill Riley never said a bad thing about somebody else in public. I thought that was always unique. He was a hard worker. He loved people. He taught me how to walk into any convention where there's a lot of people, and to be able to say hi, look somebody in the eye, make a connection, and then be able to move to the next person versus, one person for an hour in a conversation. He really knew how to engage with an entire group. And I think that was besides being on TV, that you learn tricks of the trade of, when to pause, how to say this, how to be excited, how to know your product and sell your product, which made it fun. The cable television business was so unique, though, in that cable television was just getting started. So everything we touched turned to gold. I mean, I get into this business, and all of a sudden now I'm ad sales. I just want to be a producer director. Now I'm ad sales manager, and then I became marketing manager. They needed somebody to go build the system in another town. I volunteered for that, did that, found my wife in that town, and continued to grow and grow. And the company was led by people who wanted you to take a chance. You got rewarded for taking risks. And very few companies, it was such an entrepreneur company. It was so fun that I saw how the risk and the reward all came together when it was there. I also learned a lot about failure. About a year into being in that company, I was doing on-camera stuff, playing bingo, where we do live bingo. You go get a bingo card somewhere and you play, and we give away boxes of milk duds away. I don't know, whatever it was. But in the time, it was interesting. I thought, this is fun. I'd love to maybe do this. And I noticed I didn't have a 5 o'clock shadow. So I sat down, and in those days we'd had these things called typewriters. And I typed out a letter to Schick and said, "I love your Track 2 razor, and I don't have a 5 o'clock shadow. And if you need somebody to do a national commercial, call me. I'd be happy to do that." Well, I thought, 1 or 2 weeks, I'm going to be headed for New York. 2 weeks to the day I got the letter. But during those 2 weeks, I started thinking and evaluating my life. Well, what do I really want to do? And I thought, this being on national television could really be a fun goal in life. Well, 2 weeks to the day, I got the letter, and here's what it said. "Dear Mr. Rich, we're glad and expressed your complete satisfaction with your Track 2 razor. Unfortunately, Schick doesn't make it. You wrote the wrong company. Here's Gillette's address." So I failed, but you know what? It gave me the inspiration to ultimately try a lot of different things and ultimately land on the Johnny Carson's Tonight Show and every major network, every major cable network, and all over the world in television production. All because I dreamed, I failed, but I took that and added to what makes it fun. And I learned later in life when I had grandkids, the idea of failure is that they pull themselves up on the couch, take the first step. What usually happens? Boom, they fall over. So what do? They go over and they pull themselves back up. They're not smart enough to know that, hey, you just failed. You shouldn't be doing this. They fall over again. It takes 3 or 4 times, and they're running all over the place. So it's important if, in the idea of the Carson show, if I wrote a letter to them too about asking them to see if we could adopt Johnny Carson for our hometown centennial. If I hadn't done that, I failed 44 of the letters I sent out, but the one letter that got to Johnny Carson landed me on a career path that just has been absolutely fun.
Yeah, talk a little bit about how this Johnny Carson appearance came to be, because it sounds like Was it at the time you were already doing well in cable? And it must have been, I think you were having coffee with a friend. How did you get involved in the planning of this town celebration? Yeah, give us some context.
Lifelong friendship. So I'm working, I'm doing TV, I'm doing radio, so I'm getting a little notoriety within the area. And the hometown farmer called me and said, "Hey, we're going to do a centennial. We don't know whether they're 100 years old or not, but we want to do a centennial. Will you help us with publicity because you're doing some radio and TV?" And he said, "You're our most famous person." I said, can't be the most famous. Let's adopt somebody. So we brainstormed, came up with this idea. Let's adopt somebody and let's give away a free oil and lube at the local garage, a free cemetery plot, and then ask crazy questions like, a difference between an apple pie and a cow pie, things like that. So I sat down at that same typewriter and typed out, and I hit the wrong button. And when we copied it at the copy machine, I did 44. I was only going to do 10. I did 44 letters. So I went to the library and sent it to the New York Times and the London Post and all that. Well, lo and behold, one out of the 44. If I'd only sent those 10 out, we'd have gotten no publicity out. You wouldn't be talking to me today. But one hit UPI. They liked it. They called. They said, "We're going to put it on the national wires." And within an hour, I had a call from the talent coordinator from the Tonight Show, said, "We like this. Johnny would like to apply," because he was born in Iowa. And lo and behold, we're thinking about uplinking the show nationwide, and originating from Cooper. And I thought, well, nobody's ever uplinked. They weren't doing satellite uplinks in Iowa at that point. So lo and behold, he came out, fell in love with Cooper. They technically had some problems, but they went ahead and brought us out to be on the Carson show. By the way, Ed McMahon was drinking straight whiskey in his cup. And we were 2 commercial breaks, and we were on with Tom Jones. And lo and behold, we were in front of 20 million people, and the little town of 50 people had 12,500 people show up on the screen or at the event. Well, that isn't the real success story of it. The success story comes about in that Johnny Carson idea of satellite gave me the idea to do that, because I've been working with HBO to do free HBO previews where you'd get HBO free and then we'd come on and sell info for you. So I tried that with our company. And the first time we did it, we sold $15 million worth of HBO in one weekend. So lo and behold, that helped my career, and we took off from there.
There's so much there. Before I ask a question about HBO, did you ever take improv classes? Because you did mention yes and in your book, Dare to Dream, Dare to Act, and you're always raising your hand. So did you ever take improv classes, or was doing bingo on TV, that was your class?
I think public speaking, which I've done from day one, and I was a president of this, president of that in high school, taught me the improv. I tried one time to do a comedy club amateur night, and there were 5 people in the audience because they were just looking for local amateurs. And I sweat like a hog. I've never, ever been more nervous in my life. And yet I can stand in front of 15,000 people doing a speech now. And the difference is in improv, and I think that you are always worried about what you're going to say next. When you speak from the heart and you're doing a speech, it's really easy and you know what you're talking about. So I think it's much more genuine.
Okay, let's go back to this pivotal moment in your career, a crazy idea called Gold Star Weekend. How did that change the course of your career?
Well, ultimately, the cable, the stock options, everything was great. I continued doing these free HBO previews for this cable company that I work for. But the Bass brothers in Texas took a run at our stock, and they were going to do a hostile takeover. So we did what's called a leverage buyout, and we cashed out, and all of the employees in the management group got a lot of good money. It went really, really well. So I had to decide what to do next, and I took that idea. When you're creating new ideas, you just twist them a little bit. What do you know? How do you do it? So I took the weekend, that Gold Star Weekend, and I took it to other companies. And I took it to the number one company called TCI, John Malone, who's still a huge investor and a big time guy in Colorado, and took it to his company, and they picked it up. And in all of a sudden, in one weekend, I'm selling to multi-millions of homes, and flying to Hollywood and doing a live show and coming back on Monday and no one in Iowa knew what the heck we were doing. But that's where that's probably the best money over the years. But we had our failures during that time too. But at some point, all the travel, all the money, when you have kids, you got to say enough's enough. And at age 50, I hit something called probably midlife crisis. So I decided that's when I've got to change paths. I want to do something unique, something new. And on my own, just started talking to people. And that's how I got to the zoo.
How is it that you get approached by the blank Park Zoo?
I kind of put the word out, hey, you know what? I've got all the miles I need. The cable industry was consolidated, not in many clients, that sort of thing. I'm looking to just do something that would be fun and creative. So the word got out to an ex-governor, and they had just contacted the city of Des Moines, who had the zoo. They were going to close it because they couldn't. They were losing it $600,000 a year. And they said, okay, we'll take it over as a nonprofit. And when they did that, they called me, the ex-governor called me and said, hey, would you be interested in running a zoo? Well, heck, I grew up on a farm. Well, how can a giraffe be any different than a cow? So we went in, but it was a pretty easy business model to correct. They were charging $4 to let people in. Well, where do you go for $4 that you think is worth anything? I doubled the price and then gave away all sorts of free tickets to anybody that said they couldn't afford it. And immediately we cash flowed it. And then we started looking at other ways. The city said, oh, you're going to have to spend $2 million if you do a new exhibit. And I looked around and thought, well, heck, we already have it here and we've got all the kids we ever need. Let's try something different. So we went after millennials and we started selling booze at night. That's what we figured young people wanted, and they weren't coming to the zoo. So we started selling booze at night with a band, and lo and behold, we cash flowed the joint in 6 months. No time at all. And then, and even the exhibit, $2 million, we decided to bring in a traveling exhibit called Scoop on Poop. And then for fun, we sold tiger poop to keep deer away out of people's backyards for the flowers for $20 a bucket, and made another 20 grand. So it's just some perfect blocking and tackling, but really creative and really rewarding because you could look every day. You could go to the gate and you could see smiling people. People are happy when they go to the zoo. So that was really a fun 4 or 5 years. And then as we got it going and got a $15 million endowment, so it'll be around forever, then it was time for the next person to come in that knew how to raise money for those new exhibits at $2 million a pop. So that was a fun give back for the community.
Terry, you changed the culture there to an environment that welcomed new ideas. Was that challenging to do?
It certainly was. It was all, of course, with the city running it, all union employees. So I suggested to them, hey, how would you like to get in on the fun? If we make more money, you make more money. And so we changed out the union and had some incentives and got more money in. So it was looking for ways, and that's how we started Zoo Brew. It was an employee came and said, what could we do? And I said, well, we don't have young adults, and she said, well, young adults like booze. Huh? How about if we get a liquor permit and let's do it at night so there are no kids allowed? And that's how the idea formed. And I was saying last year they sold $250,000 just in beer at these Zoo Brews at night. So it became, and once employees see others have success with coming up with an idea, they're not as afraid to bring up their ideas to make the culture and the area more exciting. But basically, it's also trying to listen. It's tough being a manager. I hate firing people. I don't want to fire people. So you try to head it off at the pass by listening and seeing what they want and knowing they've got problems at home or through a divorce or what the heck's going on, and then finding things that they enjoy doing and try to get them in the right spot. And if it's not, encourage them to move on because they're going to be a lot happier finding the job that means more to them.
And you came up with a really simple email tip or strategy to help facilitate better communication.
Yeah, it's called consider or throw away. The concept here is people, as you do brainstorming, you usually have someone, I call them the no-mans, where you say, hey, what if we paint the wall green? And somebody's bound to say, no, man, we tried that 2 years ago. Everybody hated it. And so you start a 2-step process of creating new ideas and then implementing those ideas, acting on those ideas. And the concept is when people come in to brainstorm, you say, I've got a bushel basket here. And if you think about wineries, in a winery, they don't just pick the grapes in their backyard. They pick grapes and go out and look and try samples from all of the vineyards across the valley, because it's different every year. And then they look for the one they think will be the award winner. So we want to get 100 ideas with no judgment. You can't say, no, that's a dumb idea, we've tried it. Every idea is a good idea. And once you get the 100 ideas, you walk away from that brainstorming session. And you have people kind of watch, so you don't have people looking down, having their arms crossed, all things with it. So once you get the 100 ideas, you put them in that bucket off to the side, and then you come back. And that's the time that the lawyers are going to say, hey, you're going to get sued on this. Or the accountant say, we don't have that kind of money. Or the marketer say, I don't think I can sell this. And you prioritize as a group what the best ideas are out of all of those. And you put that together. But that's great for the big brainstorm groups. But how do you get individuals then when they go back to their desk? Oh my gosh, I have another idea. How do I get rid of this? You send it out and you say, we put something in the deal that we concluded, because people, I would say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And they'd say, this is too much. We can't do all of this. So I didn't realize employees really want to please you. So I would say, no, I was just trying to give you an idea. You don't have to do it. I'm just trying to give you ideas. So we started doing emails with something called COT. So you can either have action required, which meant the boss says you got to do this. And there are sometimes you have to do that for like maybe 1% of all your emails. Then there's for your information. So you can need to know this sometime. This is something you may want to read and get updated on. But I sent a lot COT, consider or throw away, which basically says, you know what? I got to get it off my chest. Here it is, but don't do anything. I don't want you to reply to me. I don't want you to say, yeah, good idea, or that's a dumb idea. Just know that it's an idea for down the road. And all of a sudden, it spurred all these new ideas from the employees, especially frontline employees, because they're afraid to email the boss and say, hey, the chair in the front's broken. I think we should get a new chair, or any of those sort of things. But if they put COT, they knew I didn't have to respond. They knew that it got to me, that I probably read it, and they got a chance to get it off their chest, because there's nothing worse as a boss than not feel like you're listening to your employees. And people who use suggestion boxes, all the ideas that are in a suggestion box, what happens? Somebody finally reads it a week later, and then it has to go to here, to here, to here. And the person who put it in there is down in the break room going, management never listens to me. So consider or throw away is a way to put it in a way that you don't want responses on it, but you'll be surprised how many people start giving ideas and not feel guilty about getting or thinking they're going to get fired by giving that idea out.
I love it. Consider or throw away. It's simple and effective. And all of us get so many emails these days. It's just a way to be a little bit more efficient. Terry, why did you go to a government agency, leaving the zoo, to go work at the Iowa lottery?
Money. I mean, we all want money. The zoo was paying $100,000 and the lottery was paying $200,000, $250,000. And it was a budget of $3 million, $5 million at the zoo, and $350 million at the lottery. And I gave away $1 billion over the course of 10 years. The lottery was very political in that it was very vocal, visible. Every day you went to work, if you made the wrong decision, you could be fired. But there's a little bit of fun adrenaline that creates. So the lottery was a big time deal and was a lot of fun. But obviously it wasn't. You couldn't be quite as creative as you could with the zoo or the TV things that we were doing.
How does it feel to give a check away for $350 million?
Well, one, it's not my money, so it's pretty fun. And the celebration, people have great times. I also see some that I might give a $20,000 check to that they wanted me to come down and give it away, who I thought, man, why are you guys, you shouldn't be playing. Don't spend your money, only use your money that's discretionary if you're playing the lottery. But it's really an amazing deal. We worked really hard also to the big winners to say, don't just head out and buy yourself a new car. Wait. Most of the winners came back. We asked them to tell us what went well, what didn't when they won. And a lot came back and said, I wish I'd have waited 30 days to buy the red Lamborghini because I might have wanted green. or I wish I'd have waited a little while. And the other is to make sure I knew how much taxes came out of it, so I didn't overspend what I had. And I enjoyed trying to help them. And many, came back and said, you helped us by telling us what to expect. Because people who don't have wealth and couldn't handle money beforehand probably won't handle the money afterwards. But if we can give them a couple little things to hold on to it, that was a big one. And I think the best advice on a big one, if I were to even myself, we had a few winners that took a third, put it in their kid's name, a third in their name, and a third in giving to public service, giving it away to charity. And that seemed to be a pretty good formula on the great big winners.
You have such diverse, I think, observations of different money situations. I've heard you quoted saying that happiness is something that you gain on the road to success, that it's a process that derives happiness. It's a little bit different when you win the lottery, right? Overnight, you have this windfall of money, but it's not that you worked hard for it.
That's right. But you still won't be happy unless you were happy before. That's the point of that particular quote of happiness happens on the way to success. And I learned it right away at age 40 when they cashed out the cable company. I grew up and my dad would say, go to work for someone and work all your life and you'll be happy. You hit 62, you'll get your Social Security. You're going to be happy. You can relax. And I realized at 40, I had everything I wanted. And then I realized, well, happiness was all the deals we did during those times and the success we've had in that. So I had to try to recreate that when I started my own companies and did all these free HBO previews. And ultimately, same with the zoo, is after a while doing something the same way over and over, I get bored. So I was always looking for something that was outside the box, outside of my expertise to be able to jump in on. And that's what made me happy, is to have a new success and also to help others have success, and hopefully all my kids and grandkids to have that same kind of drive as they grow up to do something that they will enjoy.
I think so many of us, we feel like we would be happier if we could just make more. Do you think that's not true?
Oh, absolutely. I had everything I wanted, and even quitting the lottery, but I kept thinking, well, geez, if I work another month, I can make this much money. So that's going to get me another trip to wherever, or, those sort of things. We all crave more money. And I do to the lottery, I love promoting, I love marketing, but the lottery, I had to work on ethics because of a guy that frauded the lottery. We busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. And one of the things I found in the research I did after that all happened was, people have a desire, no matter how much you have. And especially if you're trying to do something illegal, if you get by with it once, you get greedier and greedier. You'll always, always, always get caught. And that's that gut within us that we'd like to look at ways to make more money. And I don't care how much money you have. I've got a nephew who's just killing it right now. But when he got a brand new boat, and we got excited. We went down to the lake, got in it, rowed out, and what happened when we pulled in to eat lunch? Some big honking yacht was right beside us, and all of a sudden you feel like, hey, why isn't that me? And how could I get one of those? Versus this brand new beautiful boat that very few people in any family would ever be able to ride in. So you'll always find somebody that's more successful, more well-known. So you've got to work on the happiness you have each day. And that's back to the farm. I think some of the happiest days of my life were back with the family on the farm and the day-to-day activities that happened there where we had very little money.
You said that you came to the lottery job doing promotion, marketing, and business, and you ended it with ethics. Do you think that small indiscretions have a risk of just growing into something bigger?
There is no doubt. The hard part of management is that you'd like to think that everything is black and white, and it's not. Where do you cross the line? And if you get by with a little bit of something because you needed because it felt like it was, the right thing to do for the goals that you have in a company, shouldn't we do it a little more? I guess it's like gaining weight. A little tastes great. Why not just keep honking down the ice cream? Um, I think that it's something that we all strive for. It's something we all think for. But back to the goal that I haven't made is how do you relax and how do you enjoy life today? And that's something that I think as a society we need to train ourselves a little bit better. I think Europeans do it much better than we do. They take 3 months off in the summer. I mean, I can't believe how nice that would be thinking about that, but I probably never will because I'm programmed now to be looking and doing something all the time and looking for that worth.
Talk a little bit about this fraud that you uncovered. It is a wild story. What did you learn from that as far as people in greed? And just share a little bit about how it all unfolded.
Sure. It pretty basic. A gentleman who worked not for our company, but for a national organization, a lottery organization, was the IT and programming specialist, programmed a computer so that he could predict what numbers might come out. And he got by with it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and he decided to go. Got by with it fine. So he knew there was a big jackpot coming up, and he bought the ticket in our state. Unlucky for him because our state requires knowledge of who bought the ticket. He didn't realize that. Unbeknownst to him, that the place he bought it had both video and audio. So when we released the tape of who it was to try to find out who had bought the ticket, had a whole bunch of people stand up and say, "Hey, I know that voice." And ultimately, he was having his friend and brother also cash in tickets. Took us 7 years to figure it all out. We thought it was just a small little Iowa scheme, but it became a national scheme pretty fast and the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. Well, all of a sudden, I have to be serious rather than jovial of, "Hey, get your lottery tickets today" type deal. I also had friends in the business who said, "Well, what are you doing? You're gambling with our money. This money goes to good causes. And if you're wrong and you push this and people don't want to buy because they think, all lotteries are rigged," which they aren't, you're gambling with our $80 billion. And so there was a lot of tension of, just pay it, leave it alone. And we decided to do the right thing. And luckily I had a staff and a governor who said, "I don't care what it takes. Let's take this to the end, spend whatever money you want, because that money spent is going to pay in the end." And I didn't think it would, but my lesson is that more people played the lottery after they found out that we were going after this guy and that he did fraud them and many other states, because they knew we were there to look after it and that we would try to stop fraud. So it must be safe. And so that was pretty rewarding in it, but I lost a lot of friends out of that deal because they thought we were barking it too hard. But that's what I knew is media and how to get on TV and try to drive the case to ultimately solving the case.
Did you have moments of doubt? As I read the tale in your book, The $80 billion Gamble, and it took 7 or 8 years, there were just so many challenges because of the time that took place. The investigators or attorney generals were retiring, so there was a shift in people, new people coming in, and it was difficult to keep that continuity, to keep the case going. It seemed like in many cases, this case could have fallen apart because someone wasn't there to stay on top of it and to be persistent and keep it going. The investigation could have stopped prematurely, and you could have not uncovered the depth of what had taken place.
Absolutely. And that was really frustrating. But ultimately, we got all 3 people who were involved to confess and all prosecuted and all done, and what they call a proffer, where they told us and confirmed what we investigated was right. So we got full confessions. Very few people get that because it's always appealed all the way to the Supreme Court or wherever. And so it could take 20 years on a murder case or whatever. I was happy because that vindicated that what we did was correct, that we did the right thing in the right time. But there are still some wounds there, but I sleep well at night knowing that I'm glad we did what we did to be able to solve this case.
It's one crazy story.
Certainly is how two hot dogs, a lottery ticket, and Bigfoot solved the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history.
Yeah, it's not often when you can have all three of those things in the same sentence.
And it never is just one. You realize in any success, it's never. Very rarely is it just one person. We had the great prosecutors, great agents working on the case, our own employees, all the way down to the very first call that we got that we knew something was wrong, was the frontline employee who knew the culture of the business was, if it doesn't feel right, if you see something, say something. If it doesn't feel right, say something. And in fact, she called up and said, this doesn't feel right. And that's what started the whole case and us being able to solve it.
Wow. Well, congratulations for seeing it through and catching your guys.
Yeah, I don't ever want to go through it again. So that's why I do a lot of public speaking around the world on ways to prevent internal fraud and the things to watch for, because you don't want to go through this. If you've got the right procedures and policies, oversight, checks and balances, and I praise the accountants and the legal folks because they don't win the awards. It's usually the marketers and folks like you and me who are the aggressors and the people up front that win the awards. But they're so important in an organization to keep it alive and keep people's jobs.
I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I think success is happiness. It doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean that you've got 5 kids and a nice house and all that. It's what's coming from inside, and I think mine, as corny as it sounds, is probably making other people smile, making other people laugh, making other people say, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And I've had the opportunity to do that in 4 completely different jobs on my own with a great family, and but I'm not sure I'm happier than okay, here's a quick story. See if I can tell this. Ted Turner was not a mentor, but we helped start CNN when I was in the cable business and all that. He came in to speak, and I was driving him to the speech, and he's shaking his head. And I said, "What's up, Ted?" He said, "Well," he said, "I don't know." He says, "I'm seeing 2 psychologists." He says, I have $500 million, my accountants tell me, which were really big back in those days. And he said, "I went home and I looked out the window and there are 2 dogs making love and they're happier than I am." And I kind of thought, you know what, you got to kind of think what does make a person happy and what do you do to continue. And it usually revolves around being surrounded by people who are happy and finding success and trying to take a deep breath when it's all said and done. And I'm not there yet. I'm still looking for it, but anytime I can do these kinds of discussions to learn what other people are doing and how they do it. And I think Damon John had one of the best things. I emceed a deal with him a few weeks ago from Shark Tank. He said that he has a list of 6 things every night that he looks at before he goes to bed. And in the morning he wakes up and he may revise it. But those 6 things are not things he's going to do for other people. It's what he wants to do for himself. And I thought, wow, that's profound. That, most of the time we're thinking, well, I've got to go get the lawn mowed for the family, or I've got to go get the groceries, or I've got to go, do this meeting or whatever, versus I just want 5 minutes today to go sit in the corner and think about something, or I want to have a Diet Coke today because I haven't had one for a week, or those kinds of things. But that's really something that every night he's looking for goals that personally make him happy. And that's pretty cool.
So good. So you've had 4 very different but successful careers. Will you ever retire?
I've got to be doing something. I'd like to do a lot more traveling, but COVID actually killed that. I have 2 goals right now. That I've got 2 documentaries that are being produced. One is probably going to happen with the Eddie Tipton case. And I don't know how involved I'll be in that, but I'm involved a little bit. We'll probably be helping with that. And the second one is one of the TV shows that I produced in 2000 called Soccer Slam, full contact indoor soccer, kind of WWE for soccer. We did 4 shows on Fox Sports World and Galavision. Then I got busy with HBO and didn't get any more produced. And a sports reporter picked it up 6 months ago, and all of a sudden I had a producer call and say, we want to do a doc. So that documentary on the making of Soccer Slam. So that's going to be coming out. So those will probably be my 2 finales, but honest to God, I think the most fun I'm having is when I get called to go speak somewhere outside the state, travel there, spend a few days, learn about it, do an hour speech, see the smiles in the audience, and come home, have a check, and say, that was fun.
It's good to get paid to travel.
It is, but I do them for free too, but it's a great time.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thanks for sharing your stories and lessons with us. Can you tell the Inspired Money listeners and viewers where to follow you and find out more?
The easiest way to follow me is the website, terryspeaks.com. So just go to Terry, Terry speaks.com. That'll show you all the information. The books are available there. But the fun part is just keeping in touch. And if we can help in any way to, as you say, inspire, that's what makes life fun, to meet new people. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I'm impressed by Terry's leadership that brought success to cable TV, a nonprofit like a zoo, and Iowa's state-run lottery. I hope that you're inspired by the positive impact of innovative thinking and strong leadership. Terry's tip from Damon John was gold. Let's give it a try. Every day this week, I want you to make a list of 6 goals to make yourself happy. Let's find out if happiness that starts here can ripple far and wide. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, let me know by posting a comment below. And for watching to the end, I want to send you this Inspired Money sticker. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy, send me your name and address, and I'll put this in the mail for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.